Next up, we're going to have Shaun Reardon to talk some deep cybersecurity and how cybersecurity works across different industries. And there you are, Shaun. Hi, Shaun. Can you maybe introduce yourself very briefly? And then it'd be great to hear what you think of some of the things that have been discussed so far, and also just your view of like how different the media industry or the content industries appear to be from other industries. Is there anything you're hearing so far in the conversation that's like, well, that's not my experience, or does that sound like what you're hearing in a lot of the industries that you work with?
Excellent. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation to participate. As Neil said, my name is Shaun Reardon. I work for a company called D&V Cyber. D&V predominantly is a third-party, independent third-party assurance. I've been doing cybersecurity a long time, and in my current role, I work mainly in industrial cybersecurity. So ships, factories, oil rigs, looking at various aspects of cyber, whether it's penetration testing, verification, design review, etc., incident response. I was really pleased to see Gary on there because we have a very similar background. I was a detective at Scotland Yard in London for 26 years. Did lots of things, but the line going through the whole lot was cyber. So I was counter-terrorism for 6 years, and when you go onto a plane and you can only take 100 milliliters of fluid, you can blame me. I was the lead forensic investigator on that huge operation. I was on the UK National High Tech Crime Unit, and that made me think. I thought to myself, what do I know about the media? And but I remembered we took down Drink and Die back in the early 2000s, which was piracy of media back then. It was a long time ago, but apparently it's a well-known thing. So, what do I think about what I've heard so far? I agree with everything. I really do. But there's a couple of things I'd like to show. The regulatory pressure in the industries I work in, they are heavily regulated, predominantly on safety. And because, oil rigs are dangerous places and so are ships. And one of the biggest drivers we're seeing in our yearly assessment of the industries is that the executive leadership teams are being driven to action by regulatory pressure. So that's the first point. The second thing is there's a whole raft of regulation coming out from the European Union at the moment. And that's everything from CRA, NIS, NIS2, AI Act. And I believe in the next few years, cybersecurity will become a market differentiator. I think Carrie talked about this earlier on. And the example I often give is you've got two companies, you're going to buy a product, it doesn't matter what it is. And company A, you say it's £50,000, and company B is £100,000. So normally you think all things being equal, we go for the price. But you ask the questions, what do you do about cybersecurity? And company A say, yeah, we don't worry about that. It's never happened so far. It's all a big fuss. It's a media hype. And then you go to company B and you say, what do you do about cybersecurity? And they go, well, thank you for asking. We're working towards compliance. It doesn't have to be certification. It depends on what the market wants. Do they want certification or do they want compliance? We're doing staff training. We do phishing tests. We participate in cybersecurity months, which is encouraging. And that's going back to what some of the other speakers have said. And I believe in the not too distant future, you will be forced to go for not a price-based solution, if that is the only other differentiator. Because if you don't, and as Gary said, you will have the information commissioner, whichever country you're in, going, well, okay, you've had a breach. What did you do about it? How did you protect it? It then comes out in the inquiry, and it will, that you had to make this decision. In some parts of the United States, I'm led to believe, people are going to prison for cyber gross negligence. Will that come in Europe? I don't know. But I think the market is moving towards that, and I'm certainly seeing this in my daily work, in the request for information that we respond to when we're looking, trying to get more projects, or the ones that we advise our clients on. Another interesting point I want to pick up is, again, that Gary mentioned, is culture. Getting the rhythm, getting the security baked into the DNA of that company. I saw a fantastic explanation of what culture is, and there's books being written on what is culture. But effectively, this is how we do things around here. And it's the hardest thing to change in any group of people. So having that constant um, focus on security, but not going to security fatigue. And this is the balance you have to achieve. Um, we talked about the impact of a security breach, and I'm a great believer in business continuity. And what that means is it's all gone wrong. It's happened. It's the black swan event. It's something that is such a low likelihood of happening, but it happens anyway. A 0 day, as Curry mentioned earlier on. And I'm often asked if I had a budget, say, of 100,000, let's call it pounds or dollars, where would I spend my money? And I say, well, I would spend 60% on prevention, but I would allocate 40% for recovery because it is going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And let's make no mistake, cybersecurity isn't only about deliberate actions. It's about the engineer misconfiguring something, which we see all the time. I've just come back from Japan where this happened. We had to respond to an incident on a vessel, on a ship, and it was a misconfiguration. 70% of cybersecurity incidents in the industrial world are caused accidentally, or you could say bordering negligently. Very rarely, or in proportion, is it deliberate. So the key to business continuity is to identify your critical assets. What's going to cause you the most damage? Is it reputation? Is it contractual terms? And I think Chris mentioned, believe it was Chris, about getting the contract. It's got to be in the contract, not a gentleman's understanding. Everyone's responsibilities in the supply chain, upstream or downstream. I could go on for weeks, but they were the main points I've been noting. But no, I
Hmm.
agree with everything that's been said. In fact, one final thing, we've all got to bear in mind this is business. So sometimes compromises have to be made, or risks accepted, or transferred if you are able to transfer risk either to another party or through insurance. So I think an intelligent approach to your security is critical, and that's all based on a risk assessment. It doesn't have to be some hugely
Hmm.
academic exercise, but it takes an open mind with people with competence in their industry to think what could happen, what are the consequences? If we don't deliver this, are we going to get sued, which will cost us millions? Or it could be reputational and it could be local press, which we can handle. So, yeah, it's all about the business. It's about taking sensible, risk assessed decisions that are cost effective to the best that you can. So, yeah, that's it for the time being.
That's great. The I mean, we can do a teaching moment about people being negligent in their configuration. So we had, I don't know if the guys at home will have noticed this, but we had a cyber attack as we were having our conversation earlier. There was a Zoom bomber who put some content up onto the screen, and we were messing around with it. I was messing around with it, managed to eject the person, but it had shown up on my screen as just as another, as another participant. And of course, where this is a security event, so you're already kind of you've got a red flag on your head that says, I dare you to come and Zoom bomb me.
Hmm.
um, but I mean, it is these kind of things that can, just happen to anybody at any time. There's a lot of stuff, I guess, opportunists of various types circling and always ready to exploit any vulnerability. So we're not having this thing of, the guys put on their black hoods and then wait for the, midnight and then they come shimmying down the ropes. It's something that's happening continuously all the time. Is that correct?
It's a very good point, is that there is a trend within cybersecurity to assign personas to attackers, whether it or targets. It could be the CISO of a company, it could be the HR person or the IT support. And there is this trend to try and categorize people, whether you're selling to them or whether you're going to be a target yourself. But ask yourself the question, does it really matter what the motivation is? Because the impact is the same. So when you're designing your security controls, I wouldn't personally say, right, I'm going to design it against people with this level of skill. I would take an overall view of what my business objectives and my business risks are, and then design the controls into that. I'm not saying that personas don't have a place, because they most certainly do. But when you're designing, again, complex systems, does it matter if it was an accident or does it matter if it was a nation state? If the impact is your business goes bust. And let's face it, I saw a figure from the World Economic Forum some time ago that amongst small, medium companies, SMEs, a cyber attack, 80% did not survive 2 years. Now, a bigger company can probably take a hit, a big hit, but it's all proportional to the size of your business. So, yeah, 70 to 80% of SMEs would not exist in 2 years' time after a successful cyber attack. So, plan for it to be happening.
And what should, with technology advancing and AI just automating these things, there is probably in a lot of cases there is no person there, that's just something that's happening being generated by AI or I don't know, I don't have that expertise. But
Yeah.
how do you see things developing in that way over the next few years?
Yeah, quite badly actually, because yes, AI is being used to compromise us, and there are steps now for AI to automate some of the responses. In security operations centers, which monitor business and their data traffic all the time, they have what they call SOAR and CM, and there's a whole list of acronyms, and they try and identify and block it. But you now have a thing called agentic AI. Excuse me. And what this means is, instead of you going on to, I don't know, Copilot, ChatGPT, and asking it a question, and it gives you an answer, by having these agents chained together, they can operate almost autonomously. So the output from one agent goes into another agent who performs a function, which then feeds another one. So in effect, it's a decision-making cycle which isn't directly human controlled, because it all depends on how the model is trained. I see the danger that people are rushing without insight into developing these defense mechanisms, not really understanding what it's going to do. Because some of the AI developers these days quite openly say, we do not understand how it works. So I think the human oversight, both from protection of your business, from legal liability, because the machine cannot be held liable. Let me recommend a book to you. It's called Life 3.0. It's written by a guy called Max Tegmark, Swedish guy, but he's now a professor in the States at MIT, I believe. He's written a very good book looking at the philosophical pros and cons of machine learning and artificial intelligence. It looks at criminal justice, it looks at health, it looks at public service decision making. And there's only one chapter which is technical. I thoroughly recommend this book to you because it gives you the pros and cons. And I think it's still valid today with the massive advances that have happened in the last couple of years, or the last couple of months, to be quite honest. And if you look at Anthropic and Glasswing and all the projects that have come out at the moment, it is just phenomenal. But we need, I forget who said it before, we need to understand how the business works what the impact could be and how we're going to control it, either technically or through compensating controls. Because some of this hardware can't be changed out next week. Some of the hardware I deal
Mm.
with is 50 years old. It was never designed to work with modern systems. So I think we need to keep that human oversight and not trust blindly AI, which is the way the market's going at the moment to counter either their competitors or the attacks that are coming in on cybersecurity. It's a difficult question, but I think people need to think very widely. Because let's face it, security is a mindset first and foremost.
So is there anything to be said for, I mean, can you roll back technology in your business? Is it better to have to be prudent about your tech rather than grabbing every new digital thing, or is it a matter of like we have to stay competitive, we need to bring this on?
Yeah, you can't unring the bell for a start.
No.
But I think it's the level of critical thinking that goes into it because we're all responding to competition. If our competitors bring out something, we want to be able to come out with a new service, or like we don't do products, but service to try and get our part of the market. No rolling it back, but it needs, and it can only come from the top. It has to come from the C-suite, the executive leadership teams. I spent a lot of my time doing crisis management training for executive leadership teams. Is trying to get them to think not only how to manage a crisis in its early stages, but also to think of the wider. In fact, immediately after this meeting, as you know, I'm flying to Sweden to do exactly that sort of training.
Mm.
Um, so no, not roll it back, but evaluate, bring in the right people. Don't think you know all the answers because none of us do.
And the word that keeps coming to mind throughout all this is responsibility. That idea of having to take responsibility for for your security, for your business, for your technology, and that you're not going to be able to, you can't just offload it, whether it's offload it to an AI or offload it to somebody else. You've got to take responsibility.
Well, it's more than that. It's accountability. Because
Hmm.
accountability, the buck stops with you. Responsible is normally the middle management layer, but the accountable
Hmm.
person is whose business it is, who's put their money into it. If you're the managing director, your shareholders are going to show you the door if you don't get it right. So I think I think the word I would use is governance. You hear these expressions GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Compliance is normally a third line operation, but the governance, and always bear in mind a policy is not a control. Many people think, oh, we've got a policy on that, it's a control. Policy can never be a control. It's a statement of direction, and then the fine detail is in the working instructions that come down a bit later on.
Great. Well, thanks, Shaun. We're going to hear now from some actual people working to create productions and moving out of the realm of policy and theory and technology and governance to I've just got to get this work done this week.